when COVID hit, I mean, maybe at the very beginning for a minute, everybody sort of, had that moment of gratitude. But boy, it seemed to we seemed to factionalize for the first time around something that was worldwide, right? 9/11 didn't factionalize for a long time. Not World War II, World War I, Vietnam, so on and so forth. But that did. And why is that? Why are we in a different time around tribalism? Have we jumped the shark as a society?
Well, our political leaders weaponized it for political ends, right? I mean, maybe, but I mean, I'm a Democrat. I don't think the Democrats particularly did, but certainly Trump did. And they made it an issue. They made it a cultural issue. The GOP, their strategy doesn't seem to be a policy-oriented one at the moment. It seems to be one of sort of leaning into cultural divisions, cultural fights, and trying to win elections that way. Works pretty well. And so, I would say that under different leadership, I would say under Ronald Reagan, under Bill Clinton, maybe, I don't know, Jimmy Carter, certainly, that the message coming out of the White House would have been a whole lot more focused on unity rather than mockery and derision of the scientists. I mean, Americans fell for it, but I would say the leadership, in other words, Donald Trump, completely fell down on the job. And in fact, it wasn't even a failure. It was a deliberate act to weaponize the divisions, to create divisions in COVID and then weaponize them. In addition, I mean, George Bush, and I didn't vote for the man, but George Bush didn't divide Americans after 9/11, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
He didn't say things. He said things that brought Americans together. Donald Trump did not do that. Like virtually everything he says divides Americans, right? And but in addition, the tragedy of epidemics is that you're supposed to stay away from each other, right? I mean, during the Blitz in London, which wasn't 57 days, it was 6 straight months. They lost 30,000 civilians, 30,000, 10 times what we lost on 9/11. And afterwards, people said they missed it. And they missed it because the whole society was was working to survive this thing, right? Class distinctions disappeared. The wealthy were buried in the rubble, just like the poor. The wealthy and the poor were sleeping shoulder to shoulder in the tube stations. I mean, there was. I looked at an earthquake that struck Italy in 1916 in Avezzano. Something like 94% of the population of that area was killed in under a minute. Okay, imagine. It was like they'd been hit by a nuclear bomb. And one of the survivors said, he wrote a book about it, he said that the earthquake accomplished what the law promises, but does not in fact deliver, which is the equality of all men, all people, right? So the problem with epidemics is that you physically can't be near anybody. So it's very hard to feel affiliation with them. In fact, other people might be the thing that kill you, right? The lady who sneezes on the subway, that might have just been what killed you, right? So I think that's a very, very special case.
With that, just real quick on the like, there's a saying on Twitter years after a tweet comes out, and it's proven wrong or debunked or whatever. It says this tweet didn't age well, right? That's one of those things that people say on social media. I completely agree. The bombasticness of a Trump, of any politician, it doesn't really serve anybody. I do. At the same time, what's going through my mind, honestly, is like, well, but was he wrong, or was it wrong? That movement around, hey, this isn't what it's purported to be. After a couple of months of knowing what we knew, not right out of the gate, but after a couple of months, there's a lot of information back and forth about the vaccine, about what is and isn't accurate, whether or not there's, heart issues. I can't think of the exact phrase that people have used around the heart issue that's apparently linked to the vaccine. But in that regard, I'm trying to wrap this in. So it's kind of a two-part question. One, was there something accurate about that within, when you cut through the bombasticness, was there something accurate about the idea that, hey, look, this needs to be treated a different way than maybe the mainstream is treating it right now? And secondarily, what does that say about our culture today? And our tribalism today, because we are like MAGA woke separated, right? Like that seems to be the extreme ends of both things. So I'll let you unpack that.
Yeah, well, the vaccine was developed under Donald Trump. he himself was vaccinated. He told people to be vaccinated, and now,
True.
if the reports are to be believed, virtually the only people dying of COVID anymore are the unvaccinated. So, are there heart issues? I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but even if there are, I mean, look, seatbelts save lives. Once in a while, there's a car accident where the person burns alive because he can't get out of his friggin' seatbelt. Like, yeah, I get it,
Yeah.
right? But in the sum total of good or harm to the society, like, which way are you going to go? All vaccines include that sort of a John Stuart Mill choice of what's the greater good versus the greater harm. And in all vaccines, there is a poor outcome rate of some number, right? But obviously, since the advent of vaccines, 100 years or so ago, the childhood death rates from measles and smallpox and everything else has plummeted to virtually zero. So, do some people that take those vaccines have a bad reaction? Of course they do. But people have bad reactions to antibiotics, right? I mean, I ripped my Achilles tendon because I was a mefloquine in Afghanistan, and apparently it can compromise your tendons. And I ruptured my Achilles on a combat patrol, right? So, but I didn't get malaria, so. I mean, that's just a standard medical issue. It got politicized and weaponized by a president who was also taking the vaccine and telling you to take it. Like, it was his commentary on the vaccine was completely contradictory, right? And any president should be. I mean, Ronald Reagan wasn't contradictory, right? Jimmy Carter wasn't, right? They sort of figured out what was more or less best for America, and tried to espouse that position. That was not what Trump did, right? And so I mean, I'm a Democrat. Whatever. Like, my problem with Trump isn't that he's a Republican.
Right.
He's that he's a self-serving narcissist, right? Like, there's dozens of Republicans I would vote for and hug if they won, right? Just not Trump. And if Trump were a Democrat, I'd feel exactly the same way about him.
You know who's fascinating? Have you been following Robert Kennedy? Not to get on this, but just for a second. Have you been following Robert Kennedy or Bobby Kennedy?
Yeah, I have. I mean, just from the headlines, but yeah.
Yeah, interesting guy. I'm really curious to see. I don't think he has a shot just because, he's going against the establishment candidate, the actual existing president. But, there's somewhere between the lunacy you hear about him from a headline perspective, and then when you listen to the guy, like anybody, right? When you actually listen to the guy, it's like, you know what? There's some interesting points he makes. There's some science he cites, and there's always reports on both sides. But he is an interesting candidate. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to a few things he said, and he is clearly extremely smart.
Very.
Right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't dissemble, right? Like, I don't agree with him on a whole lot of things.
Sure.
But he's not playing this sort of verbal chess game. I don't know his name well enough to repeat it. Vivek, is it?
Oh, yeah. The other guy. I can't think of his name. I could picture him, but yeah.
Super smart, right? Super smart, very verbally adept. And, he's been asked about the documents, and he's a lawyer, and he's just dissembling, right? I mean, he's like, sorry, man, I know you actually don't really believe that, but you're playing a chess game here. But you're playing a chess game with American security, with the welfare of America. I'm sorry, these are nuclear secrets. Don't play a cat and mouse game with me about, well, there's like locks on the bathrobe. Fuck you, man. You know what I mean? In some ways, like, he's probably a more reasonable candidate policy-wise, but I actually respect him less because I hate it when people dissemble and lie on purpose. I hate it. I think Democrats do it too, and I absolutely loathe them for it.
Thanks for watching. If you want to see this entire episode, just click or tap here. If you want to see another clip from this channel, click or tap right here.